What's going on, diehards and degenerates? Happy Veterans Day, happy Friday, UFC 281 Fight Week. This is the undefeated post-weigh-in show brought to you by Superbook Sports and Pub Sports Radio. We take one final look at these fighters as they step on the scales in the morning, and we try to use any little information we can glean from those weigh-ins to make better bets and put money in your pocket come Saturday. Big freaking fight card. I just finished finaling all my action up, so I'm excited to talk through this with you. We haven't had the ceremonial face-offs just yet. It's a UFC pay-per-view card, so those will be a little bit later this afternoon. But what we've started doing for these big UFC pay-per-view cards is the post weigh-in show, sharp action report. I get joined by my guy Andrew from Superbook Sports. He lets us know where the sharps have come in for this fight card, and you can choose to tailor fade that action using that information as you see fit. So I'm going to go ahead and rock the undefeated post weigh-in show pre-face-offs, and then if there's anything that jumps out to me at the face-offs, I will mention that at the sharp action report this afternoon. First fight of the night, we've got Negumereanu taking on Carlos Ulberg. We've got Ulberg money flooding in, it looks like. This line was a pick'em price tag a little earlier in the week, and flooding may be a little too strong of a word, but all I'm seeing online is love for Ulberg. He's a minus 135 now on Superbook Sports, plus 115 on Negumereanu. Now, I spoke on this one on the Monday show, and I thought Nikolai was maybe the side here. He's the type of Homer Simpson zombie that can walk forward and take the beating and then use his pace and pressure to break an opponent. Ulberg, we have questions as to how long his gas tank is going to last. The one time we've seen him pressured, he ended up collapsing under that pressure and not doing well. So I've kind of flipped my position on this one ever so slightly, simply because Ulberg did open up as like a minus 250 favorite. So the bookies are telling us that he should be massively favored in this spot, and it's been the bettors that came in and hammered Negumereanu. Now, we saw this last week in a fight where the line opened up huge and everybody else told the bookies they were wrong and the bookies were right. So it gives me big pause here as far as making a money line play. Now, when it comes to the way these guys looked on the scales, Negumereanu made 206. He did need the box of shame. Big smile. He's a big, thick man. He jogged off the scales afterwards, so there's no issues with him whatsoever. Like, he was just cutting it a little bit close. I think he had comfortable room to cut a bit more if he needed to. It's not like one of these dead guys on the scales today. Carlos Ulberg made 205.2. He gave the big, slow flex. I mean, like, feeling himself every moment of it. This sexy bastard. I hate him. These guys are both in great shape. They're both coming to play. I like this fight a lot. I kind of like the over 1.5. I haven't made that an official bet just yet. I do feel like Ulberg is going to have a hard time cracking that brick head of Negumereanu, and this fight gets extended because of it. But at minus 165, that's a tough nut to swallow. Tough nut to crack. I probably shouldn't have said that. At this point, I am passing on this fight. Initial lean was Negumereanu, but because of the initial line setting that my guy Liam pointed out to me, I think I'm leaning more towards Ulberg. I did throw in a parlay together just for funsies. We'll mention that here in a little bit. Next fight up, we got Julio Arce taking on Montel Jackson. Arce 135.8, Montel Jackson 135.8 as well. There's lots of .8s today. The scale must have been very weird. Arce was punching the air. I mean, like, he was shadow boxing up there with a big smile on his face. I have never seen anybody so happy to make weight before. He must have been struggling, but he moved well, looked good, no problems. Montel Jackson absolutely shredded. He's another one of these guys that needed the box of shame right away. Big smile afterward, though. Looked like it was just a precaution. They knew it was going to be close. He made it by .2. We'll take it. I'm not too worried about what I saw there. Montel Jackson is a minus 200 favorite. Julio Arce is plus 175, and this seems like the spot where, like, everybody's going to hammer Julio Arce because he should be the value side, and then Montel Jackson just steamrolls him with physicality. Like, that's what I'm expecting to see here. I can't justify laying minus 200 based on what we've seen. The eye test is telling me this is a Julio Arce bet. My gut, the hairs on the back of my neck, everything else is telling me that Montel Jackson takes him down and knocks his ass out. So I'm going to pick Montel Jackson. I'm not going to lay minus 200 on it. I will probably have the KO prop in like one of my Hail Mary sprinkle parlays or something like that, just for funsies, but that's kind of how I'm feeling on that one. I don't blame you whatsoever if you want to trust Julio Arce. He's a very talented fighter and deserving of a shot at plus 175 here. Sungwoo Choi taking on Mike Trizano. Choi came in at 145.6. Trizano 147.6. We've got our first weight miss of the day. Choi looked like he had some bruising, actually, like some swelling and some bruising on the side of his face. Maybe it was just the lighting, not sure, but no real issues. Looked fine on the scale. Dude's always in shape. Mike Trizano, on the other hand, looked bad. Extremely slow getting up to the box of shame. His face was sucked out. His eyes were half closed. Like, this is one of those guys that looks half dead getting to the scale this morning, and it's a big miss. 2.6. Now, he's probably fighting for his job in this spot. Let's bust out the old tinfoil hat. Trizano is a guy who I've had an up and down relationship with. Can't seem to figure him out. I talked about it on Monday. If he comes out here and wrestles, he probably has a path to victory in this spot. But we know Mike Trizano just simply doesn't follow good game plans. So if he's going to come out here and bang with Sung Woo Choi like he always does with everybody, bad weight cut, bad skid, coming off a quick turnaround and a bad knockout, Sung Woo Choi is the kind of fighter that's going to take advantage of all of that and put him down. So I did lay the minus 170 on Sung Woo Choi. 1.7 units, 2 win, 1. He was minus 150 earlier in the week, and I kind of thought that I wanted to jump in on that, but I was a little hesitant. Lines moved 20 cents the other way. I think now we know why. I think something's up with Trizano, and I did go ahead and put a half unit on the knockout prop over on Superbook Sports. We have got Sung Woo Choi by KO plus 260. So I like that. I do think the finish is going to be on the table. Mike Trizano looks like he's compromised, and even if he doesn't go back and continue cutting weight, he looks so bad. Like, I think this fight gets canceled if he tries. Like, the doctors will not let him continue, I would bet. We don't have confirmation on that for sure, but this seems like kind of an unceremonious boot out the door for Trizano, because if he loses to Choi on Saturday, that's got to be it, especially after a weight miss. And I'm going to go ahead and step on his throat here. I'll take my opportunity to bet against him, and hopefully we can bag a quick couple of units there to start the night. Silvana Gomez Juarez taking on Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Both women made 115.6. No issues for Silvana whatsoever. She gave a good strong flex. She looks in shape, man. She took this fight camp seriously, physically looking solid. Karolina Kowalkiewicz gave a big old woo after they called her weight. Man, she looked so nervous. Like, it seems like she had a tough weight cut simply from the fact that she was so relieved when they called the weight. She looked a bit rough up there. Very happy to have made it. I've talked about this before, folks. I don't believe in Karolina. I think her comeback win was a bit fraudulent. She took a essentially retired fighter who was busted and lost confidence in herself 4 minutes into the fight. That's who she beat on her comeback tour, and she was eating punches the entire time. I laid it with Silvana Gomez Juarez. I was waiting. The reason I was waiting so long in the week, I keep seeing people picking Karolina. I was hoping to get plus money on Silvana Gomez, but it's still sitting at a pick of minus 110 on either side. I did lay 1.1 units to win 1 here on Silvana Gomez Juarez, and I did throw a half unit sprinkle on the knockout prop. This girl throws hammers, and I really think that Karolina just at this point doesn't like getting hit. And now I know she's been tough. She's been tough to finish. You know, it's only been a couple of the biggest hitters in the division that have actually been able to get her out of there. But I think she's, again, kind of at the end of her run here. She's at the end of her career. And there's a chance that she will go home if she gets hit by one of these gigantic blasts to the face from Silvana Gomez Juarez. Not to mention, Gomez Juarez was just promoted to BJJ purple belt, so I know the big issue with her has been the grappling, the ground transitions, the arm bars. She's working on that part of her game, and I don't think Karolina is strong enough to take her down. That's really what this comes down to. Karolina is physically weak in there against opponents like Silvana Gomez Juarez, and if she can't get the takedown, I don't know how she's going to end up getting that arm bar. So let's rock with Silvana on Saturday. Ottman Azaitar taking on Matt Frivola. We've got Azaitar coming in 155.6. Absolutely jacked, this guy. Cannot believe what he's made of. Matt Frivola, 154.8. He looked good, strong flex, crazy eyes. You know I love my redheads. Dude up there rocking that fiery red beard. Money has been flooding all week on the Ottman Azaitar fight side of things here. He was plus 125 earlier in the week. Now he's minus 145. I'm kind of sitting tight on this one. I leaned to Ottman Azaitar by knockout on the Monday show. And then as I've looked more and more into this, you got to wonder what happens if Azaitar doesn't get that first initial knockout blow on Saturday. Because Matt Frivola's pace and pressure and takedown and wrestling and scrambles and top position, like, that's all vicious stuff. That if Azaitar taking on the low level of competition he's faced so far in the UFC, stuff he's never dealt with before, if he can't get the knockout early, I think Matt Frivola just takes over and destroys this guy. But the nuclear option is always there, and Matt Frivola's chin is questionable, so I don't really want to jump in at this point. I should have jumped in on his ATAR at plus 125. I missed that opportunity. I'm not laying minus 145 with him. Matt Frivola in this spot, I don't think he should be the underdog. He's the more well-rounded fighter. He's got the higher ceiling, the better skill set. I know he's not training with Team Khabib, but he's the real prospect out of the two of these guys. His ATAR fights once a year for fun because he can, because he's buddies with Dana and he's buddies with Khabib. Like, I think Matt Frivola is very live in this spot, and at plus 125, I am tempted to like flip and take the dog now, plus money on either side, whichever side you're getting that plus money on. You know, if you got in on his ATAR early, I wouldn't mind arbing out and taking the plus money on the Frivola side, sweat free, put the cash in your pocket type of situation. But I do think this fight gets hairy. It probably ends in the first round, and it's a decent live betting opportunity if his ATAR can't get Frivola out of there and Frivola is still conscious going into the second round. You might be able to get a better position on Frivola live, knowing that his ATAR may end up fading down the stretch if he can't get that early knockout. So I'm a little torn up on this one. I'm probably just going to end up passing at this point because I've bounced around so much on it, but the plus money on Frivola definitely has my interest. Next up, Andre Petrowski taking on Wellington Turman. 185.8 for Andre Petrowski, 185.2 for Wellington Turman. Petrowski gave a massive flex. This is our wild man of the week. The dude's an absolute tank. He's got crazy eyes up there, self-belief in himself. I mean, this is... Yeah. I mean, how do you not like Petrowski the way he looks at weigh-ins today? Wellington Turman, heavy eyes. Really heavy eyes up there. Seemed very sensitive to the light. Looks like he had a bit of a tough weight cut. He's a bigger dude. I want to see these guys face off. This is one where I do want to wait for the ceremonials because I want to see how they actually measure up to one another. Andre Petrowski, I've got a feeling, is going to be a decent bit shorter, but he's got all that muscle mass on him. It may not matter. Minus 210 for Andre Petrowski. I don't like that number. I don't trust Andre Petrowski, but at the same time, it looks like he's coming around, and Wellington Turman is always a guy that I want to fade. Now, I know Turman's got the striking advantage. I think Petrowski's going to have the wrestling advantage, and then it all comes down to the BJJ. Both these guys are high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners. Wellington Turman's chin is something I always want to be on the other side of if I can be. But the over 1.5 at minus 140 kind of has my attention. I can see this being a sloppy striking match. I can see this being a fight that both guys want to keep on the feet because grappler versus grappler, we end up getting a bad kickboxing match a lot of times. So if this fight gets extended and maybe it has a late finish once these guys are kind of tired and worn out, one wants it more, one pushes a little harder than the other. That's how I could see this fight going. The minus 140 has me a little bit scared because I don't want to lay that kind of a price against these guys. But yeah, I would be looking over 1.5. The other thing is maybe go back to that Andre Petrowski round 3, because if he is able to continue his wrestling pace, I mean, we talked about Andre Petrowski's got a bad gas tank. It's not like Wellington Turman's gas tank is anything to write home about. The guy gets tired and slows down in fights too. We saw Misha Cirkunov dump him and put him on his back in the second round a couple times. He was heaving for air in that spot. If not for the meme arm bar, he ends up getting probably finished in the second or the third round. So 14-1 Andre Petrowski round 3. Maybe that's the D-Gen sprinkle here of the week. Aaron Blanchfield taking on Molly McCann. Coming up next, Blanchfield 125 on the dot, McCann 125.4. Casual one-arm flex from our girl, Aaron Blanchfield. Molly McCann, very relaxed, arms behind the back. Classic Molly up there. She's a thick, big girl. Another one I want to see the face-offs for. I want to see how these two size up. Blanchfield, giant favorite, minus 400. She opened up in the minus 200 ballpark, though, so, you know, the people are deciding that this line is much wider than maybe the bookies expected. Molly McCann, I feel like maybe she's being a little disrespected at this number, plus 330. It seems wide for somebody as tough and as durable as her, but if Aaron Blanchfield comes out with the right game plan and just kind of chain grapples her, smothers her, puts her on her back, I do think she probably ends up winning. It's kind of that spot where I'll take Aaron Blanchfield by decision at near even money. That seems like a really good way to bring down the price tag of a minus 400 favorite, almost an auto bet. But something's keeping me off of it. Like, something's holding me back, saying Molly McCann is live in this fight. The self-belief she's got in herself, the type of power she hits with. If Aaron Blanchfield makes a young, dumb fighter mistake, maybe she gets caught. I don't know. I'm kind of leaving this one alone. I don't want to parlay at minus 400. It doesn't do a whole lot. You're still laying massive chalk. The Aaron Blanchfield by decision is probably the way that I would look if I was going to end up betting this fight. But Molly McCann, I don't know. Something on the back of my neck is telling me that Molly's live in this spot. So I'm probably just going to end up passing and leave it alone. Dominick Reyes taking on Ryan Superman Spann. Reyes came in at 204, Spann 206.6. Dominick Reyes, big smile. He's never the most ripped guy you've ever seen. He's kind of a big, thick boy, so, can't ever expect too much from him, but he looked comfortable, which is good. Coming back from a layoff, coming back from a break, for him to make weight easily and do it comfortably, that says something to me. Now, Ryan Spann needed the box of shame, and he was not able to make weight. He looked absolutely defeated. They made him stand up there and take a picture. I mean, don't get me wrong. His abs are popping. This is a big, strong dude. He's in good shape. I can see what you're saying about the physicality of this guy, but his emotions, he's a good hammer and a bad nail. He's a confidence fighter, and he just already looks like he's got one foot out the door here after missing weight today. This is the spot for me, folks. I am putting the undefeated 4-0 7-unit bet record on the line on Saturday here on Dominick Reyes. I've been waiting. I was hoping to get a break here. I see a lot of support in the Twitter sphere for Ryan Spann. I was hoping that would pull the money down just a little bit, but unfortunately with the weight miss, it did the opposite. It went back the other way. So I did lay minus 4.3 units at 215 for Dominick Reyes, and then I put 3.15 units on the inside the distance at minus 105. This is a spot where you don't want to get tricky, folks. Ryan Spann has been knocked out. That left hand is a problem. It's a big deal for him. Reyes, that's his best punch. So you expect the knockout to be coming in this situation if Dominick Reyes is going to finish. However, the knockout is plus 100, plus 105. The inside the distance is minus 110, minus 105. There's just not enough meat on the bone there to cause a difference. Dominick Reyes has a wrestling advantage here in this spot. He's been working out with Glover Teixeira. You never know. If he decides to go in there and show off his grappling chops, he could easily win this fight by submission. We know Ryan Spann likes to jump for the ghillie, and he puts himself in bad positions and puts himself on bottom. The submission is live in this spot. Don't play the knockout prop if you're going to bet the Ryan Spann side or the Dominick Reyes side of things. Play the inside the distance. The 8-1 sub prop had my attention early on in the week. I still think KO is far more likely, but don't get me wrong, it's not one of those things that is never going to happen. It absolutely could happen. Don't put yourself at risk, because if you have the knockout prop and you're kicking yourself on Saturday because you didn't cost yourself, 5 cents, 10 cents to play inside the distance, just don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. I've done that before. It doesn't feel good. Renato Moicano taking on Brad Quake Riddell. Moicano 155.5, Riddell 155.6. Moicano's another guy that needed the box of shame immediately. He's shredded up there. No real issues. Face is pretty sucked out, but that's pretty common for Renato Moicano. Brad Riddell, great shape, blank face, no emotion. This guy's coming out like a Terminator, it looks like to me. I think he's extremely motivated in this spot. Moicano is a minus 120 favorite. Brad Riddell plus 100, even money in this spot. I went ahead and did it. I played Brad Riddell, 2 units, plus 100. I like him here in this spot. He's one of my go-to-war guys. I love backing Brad Riddell. One of the few times I've ever bet against him was his last fight when he fought Jalen Turner, and that was a beauty. So he's a guy I've had a pretty good read on. He's been printing money essentially for me. I think I've only gotten really one spot wrong, and that was the fight where we kind of knew, the fight before the Tarantula where he took on Rafael Fiziev. I thought he was live in that spot. It was a small bet. Fiziev is obviously Fiziev at this point, and I need to stop trying to bet against him. So pretty good run here with Brad Riddell personally. So I'm going back to war with him. I think this is a spot where he can get back on track. Moicano is a guy that will accept bottom position. We've seen him get wrestled before. RDA was able to put that game plan on him. I think Riddell can do it too. So I'll take the even money here. Next up, Dan Hooker taking on Claudio Puelles. Hooker made 155.8, Puelles 155.2. And Dan Hooker looks so much healthier at 155, folks. So much healthier. He's feeling himself. He's amped up there on the scale. Arms are freaking huge. I don't know how he does it. He's got one of the weirdest body types I have ever seen. His biceps are massive, even though his arms are like string beanie somehow. I don't get it. But Claudio Puelles, eyes sunken in, face sucked out. I mean, he moved pretty well, but he's another one that looked like Skeletor on the scales. Now, he may be an unofficial Brazilian balloon. We'll have to see as his career continues if he meets that moniker here for me. But if he's one of these guys that gets super sucked out at face-offs and then fills back up for the fight and looks fine in the cage on Saturday, I'll need to make a note of that moving forward. But this is a spot where I feel like Dan Hooker is just... I got to do it. He's being disrespected here in this spot. It's another massive step down in competition. We saw what happened in his last fight when he had that step down in competition. If he's not fighting a top 5 guy, He beats the brakes off of whoever he's in there with. Claudio Puelles, I'm not overly impressed with his striking. If he's kickboxing with Dan Hooker's going to win that fight. And then, of course, he does have the knee bar, the slick submissions. Claudio Puelles absolutely can snap the limb off of pretty much anybody in there. But beyond that, I don't know that he's got much of a chance to victory, in my opinion. He's going to lose in a kickboxing fight. If it's a straight-up grappling matchup, we have seen Dan Hooker is very talented on the mat himself, and he knows how to protect his legs and his ankles. So hopefully he just kind of avoids all that, keeps this thing standing. I've got to lay the minus 155, 3.1 units to win, too. It's one of these spots where I'm not happy about it. Like, the toughest bets to make are the best bets to make, in my opinion. It's one where Dan Hooker should probably be minus 200, minus 225 in this spot, but because of everybody's opinion of him and the hype around Claudio Puelles, we're getting minus 155. I have to bet this number. It's a number I must bet because I think the side is simply wrong. That's all this comes down to. And here's where things get interesting. I haven't done it yet, but I am tempted to get a Dan Hooker reverse Uno card here. His sub prop is 12-1, folks. His sub prop is 12-1. His opponent may have had a tough weight cut. You know, guys with tough weight cuts, if they end up going down, they end up quitting. Usually they look for a way out. They give up their neck. They tap. This guy's got a tight squeeze on him. He knows what he's doing on the mat versus a guy who wants to get to the ground and grapple. And a guy who may be too tough for Dan Hooker to just like cleanly KO on the feet. I feel like there may be like a follow-up scramble, a bad shot, a bad takedown, a panic wrestle. And if that happens, the guillotine of Dan Hooker is always something that's going to be there. He's got submissions on his record, more than you would expect. Dan Hooker by sub at 12-1 has my attention. That may get a sprinkle here on Saturday. That's the tinfoil hat read of the week here, folks. All right, next up, we have got Frankie Edgar taking on Chris Gutiérrez, and I am so sad. It's the final weigh-in, the final fight for Mr. Frankie Edgar, the legend himself. He came in at 135.6. Gutiérrez 136 on the dot. Frankie Edgar looking shredded, much skinnier than we're used to. I remember the good old days against Gray Maynard at 155, where Frankie Edgar basically looked like Michael Chandler at 155. He gave a solid flex, no issues. You know, business as usual for Frankie. Chris Gutiérrez, very relaxed, looking good on the scales. Again, no issues for him. He's not another one of these, like, super jack type of body types or anything. Gutiérrez is a minus 230 favorite. Frankie Edgar is plus 195. And, you know, guys, I went to war with Frankie Edgar one last time with Chito Vera. I expected that to kind of be the end of the run for him, but I thought, you know, he can grind out somebody like Chito, and it looked good. It was 1-1 going into the third, where Frankie really looked like he was getting his mojo going, and then he got front kicked to death by one of the hardest finishers the UFC has to date. I don't know if Chris Gutiérrez fits that category. Like, I don't think Frankie Edgar is getting finished in this fight, quite frankly. I know a lot of people expect Gutiérrez to go ahead and get the knockout in this spot, but his spinning back fist meme KO in his last fight, I don't think that's something that we're going to see replicated very often. I think this fight is more of a classic Chris Gutiérrez leg kick and run type of spot. He wants to avoid the wrestling. He's going to try and keep his lower body safe from Frankie Edgar coming in for shots. And in the big cage, he's going to be able to move around. I think we probably get some grappling exchanges. We've seen, you know, Frankie Edgar is one of the best wrestlers in the division, and Chris Gutiérrez gets taken down by people, gets his back taken, gets controlled, but neither guy really gives up those finishes from those spots. I kind of like the over 2.5 at minus 160. Don't pick a side, root for Frankie, get this thing to the distance, and expect that probably Frankie's going to lose his retirement fight. Chris Gutiérrez, by decision, is plus 190 on Superbook Sports. That's not too bad. I mean, if you want to ride one final time into the abyss with Frankie Edgar, Frankie by decision is plus 350. You know, I wouldn't hate you for doing that in this kind of a spot. He does have paths to victory here in this fight. Very live underdog, but you know me, one of the rules, we do not bet retiring fighters. If they come in and they've already stated this is the last fight, I am retiring, 1 foot out the door, you know that changes the mentality. You know there's nothing more to fight for. You know they've already got it in the back of their head that they're done after this. That makes it easier for them to give up. That makes it easier for them to quit. They may not fight for your money the way that they used to. Now, Frankie is the kind of guy who, honestly, I would not put in that category. He's a warrior. He's a champion. If there was ever a retiring fighter that I would feel comfortable breaking that rule and putting my money on, it'd be a guy like Frankie, because I fully expect him to go out there and give his best. But I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. If I'm playing anything here, it's going to be the over 2.5 minus 160 or one of these decision props. At this point, I have no action. I'm probably just going to cheer my ass off for Frankie Edgar to get one final win. Michael Chandler taking on Dustin Poirier. Chandler 155.8 and Dustin Poirier 156 on the dot. Michael Chandler is just jacked. I mean, you guys know. You've seen him. This guy is insane. He's ridiculous. He's a freaking fire hydrant. Dustin Poirier looked amped up, gave the one-arm flex, business as usual, rooting for himself, clapping, excited. This is going to be a good fight. Dustin Poirier minus 210. I'm picking him to win, but at the same time, I've stood in front of Michael Chandler before, and he's nuked my guy many a time, so I'm not doing that here. Michael Chandler also has that wrestling in his back pocket. If he does decide to go ahead and get in there and make this thing a scrap, we could see some groundwork here. And if that's the case, he's far more live, I think, than if he goes in there and just tries to nuke a guy like Dustin Poirier right away. The other thing that's got my attention is, again, the total. The over 1.5. Minus 145 for over 1.5 Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler. I've been burned on this before. It looks like it's going to get home every time. And then whoever dies in the first round at the very end of the round, I've been burned on it several times. And frankly, I'm tired of getting burned on it. But I could see this fight going over. The way that this fight sets up, Chandler is saying he's got to do anything and everything to get the win. So because of that, I kind of think we maybe see a little bit of a change of direction from him. Not quite so much brawl, maybe a little bit more of a pace, a slower pace so that he can control his opponent. We've seen him go the distance in Bellator before. I wouldn't mind the over here in this spot. I may add that to my card. I just got to figure out if I'm going to nut up and do it or not, but I think I probably should. The champion, Carla Esparza, made 114.8 today, first to the scales. Weili Zhang 114.8 as well, had to strip down, needed that box of shame. Carla Esparza rocking the abs. She's in fantastic shape. Contrary to popular belief, she is taking this fight very seriously. And Zhang Weili gave a huge flex. This girl looks physically imposing, very strong. Can't wait to see them size up here after the weigh-ins. Zhang is minus 360 favorite, and while I am picking Zhang to win, I'm part of the herd. I do think that by hook or by crook, the UFC wants her to win. She's going to get her arm raised at the end of this thing. Carla Esparza just keeps winning. She just keeps winning. She's always an underdog. She's a literal champion, and she just continues to maul people on the ground. And one of the things that really jumped out to me, Santino DeFranco, shout out to my guy Brandon Olivas and Santino. Their podcast is really interesting. Santino talked about how he got kicked out of camp because he was working with Zhang's group at Fight Ready and talked about how they really need to work on her get-up game. He wanted to make that a priority, was work on her get-up game. And her team was so emphatic that she did not need to work on her get-up game because there was no chance she was going to get taken down. They kicked Santino DeFranco out of the fight camp. Tinfoil hat is firmly on the head at this point, folks. You've got a champion who is lined as a plus 300 underdog in a weight class where she's proven only the very best beat her and not usually by a wide margin. And if Weili Zhang's team is not letting her fix the hole in her game, which is giving up those takedowns and then getting back up to her feet, with a coach the level of Santino DeFranco, a guy who would be able to show her exactly how to do that, if they are not letting her patch that hole because they have confidence that she's just good to go, Carla will maul her. Carla will take her down and whoop her ass. It may be a very boring fight, and Carla is going to stand in front of a crowd that is booing their faces off as Dana White is forced to put that belt back around her waist. Because of that little shred of information, there's no way in hell I'm playing Weili Zhang. I can't parlay her. I can't play her inside the distance. She may very well beat the brakes off Carla Esparza if Carla can't get her down to the mat. But hearing that that's her team's perspective, I can't do it. If they're just not afraid of Carla Esparza's takedowns, we've seen Weili be taken down and sat on many times. We've already seen it a bunch of times. And Carla is relentless. So if her team is not properly preparing her for this matchup and they're expecting to just roll through Carla on the feet, this fight gets very interesting, folks. I do think at the end of the day that Weili Zhang is very much the Sean O'Malley this week where they want her to win. She probably will get her hand raised one way or the other. But damn it, plus 300, it's a dog or pass spot. You got to go Carla or nothing here in this spot if you're looking from a betting perspective. And Carla by decision is 6-1. 6-1. That might be another spot where I must bet. It might be another spot where I'm forced to bet Carla Esparza because her best path to victory is by decision. And if this thing goes 25 straight minutes, do we really think she's a 6-1 underdog to Weili Zhang? If this thing doesn't finish, if this thing goes a full 25-minute fight with the way these two match up, do we think Zhang is going to be a runaway favorite to win that decision? I don't. That's just a bad number. So we'll see. At this point, haven't done anything. I've got a lot of other action out there that I'm very confident on. Maybe this is like I'm winning, so I throw a dart at it on Saturday. Like, if things are going well and we're up going into the last couple fights, maybe throw in at that point or something like that. I'll figure it out. I don't know. But I might end up having to play a little something on Carla Esparza. Main event time, folks. Israel Adesanya taking on Alex Pereira. Israel Adesanya came in at 185 on the dot. Pereira made 184.6, and Izzy dragged to the scale today, folks. We never see Izzy struggle on the scales. And he was doing this weird, one eye blink closed thing. I've never seen Israel Adesanya look that, but he looked completely destroyed. He had to, grab part of the wall to, get himself up the steps onto the stage today. And it's Izzy. This is the problem. It's Izzy. He does so much goofy shit that he may be acting. This might be a gag to sucker people in. I really want to see what he looks like at the face-offs today. I really can't wait to see how he looks after he's had a chance to rehydrate, because this could be an act. This could be truly a bad weight cut because he added some muscle for this fight or something like that. Interesting tidbit. I thought we were going to see the gyno pop up. It looks like that's been a thing this week as people are capturing shots of it. He's been covering that side of his chest in all of his pictures, and I didn't see it on the scales today. It doesn't look like it's a thing. It doesn't look like it's there. So very, very intriguing here. His opponent, Alex Pereira, needed the box of shame right away. Another one of these ones that didn't even bother. Walked right up and was like, give me the box. He looked very drained, but determined. You could see the fire in this man's eyes. He gave a gigantic flex. His face is sucked out, but he is there. He's there to fight. This is a big, big man. So what I've done is I've taken the plunge. In the words of the prophet Gwen Stefani, take a chance, you stupid hoe. I did do the city kickboxing parlay, folks. I did go ahead and lock in one unit, the CKB parlay, plus 746. Ulberg, Hooker, Riddell, Adesanya, meme shit. That's exactly what I'm going for here. I do think the city kickboxing guys should roll. I'm already on Brad, Riddell, and Hooker individually, obviously, in case that gets nuked. I'm a little worried about the left hook of Pereira. I'm a little worried about Ulberg and, Negumereanu being the guy that blows the lead there to start the night. That's why I did the individual bets as well. But these guys are always such chalky favorites. When they first got to the UFC, I did this city kickboxing parlay, and it was paying out handsomely. 4 and 5 to 1 every time they had a show, and they would always just sweep the board. But recently, the prices have been adjusted. They've been bigger, chalkier favorites. It hasn't been worth it. Some of them have been dropping the ball. This is the spot where I think they all do get back on track, and especially with that number at 7 to 1, 746. I'll roll the dice. That one's for fun. I will roll the dice and say the city kickboxing guys all go home with their hand raised here on Saturday. And if it loses, I'm just rooting for Hooker and Riddell, basically. I do think Israel Adesanya probably defends his belt here on Saturday, but it's another one where you just can't trust the guy, right? He's talked about how he's going to murder people and leave them in a pool of his own blood, Colby Covington style, and then he kicks them in the thigh and runs for 25 minutes. So I want to say under. I want to say the under 4.5 in the main event is kind of the way that I would look here, because that way if Pereira nukes him, you get the win. And if Pereira can't hang in those championship rounds and Israel Adesanya does get him out of there and dust him, you still get the win. But at the same time, I can't trust Izzy to really go for that finish. And the way Izzy was dragging on the scales, again, I don't know if that's an act or not. I want to think it's not an act because I don't think Izzy's that good of an actor. But the one eye blink thing is what kind of has got me going here. That was weird. Even people who are struggling just don't do that. So, tinfoil hats back on for that one. I don't know what the hell's going on with Izzy. So I want to see him at the ceremonial weigh-ins and face-offs. We'll see what we want to do at that point. Lean is Izzy. Lean is under for the main event. If you want to take a shot with that, Israel Adesanya by knockout, plus 350 to defend his belt with all the bad blood going. I don't mind it. Pereira, same thing here. You've got 3 to 1 on Superbook Sports for Alex Pereira to go ahead and get the knockout. That's how he wins. If you think he's going to dethrone Israel Adesanya, take the 3 to 1 instead of the plus 180. Go for it. Lean on that left hook. Folks, that is the Undefeated Post Weigh-In Show. I hope you had a good time. Join me later this afternoon. Check out Pub Sports Radio on YouTube. We're going to do the Sharp Action Report with my guy Andrew from Superbook Sports. So smash the like button. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. Good luck on all your action at UFC 281, and I will see you in a couple of hours. Let's roll!